This is the commentary track for Finding Forever Eden, or also known as The Ghost of Arcanum. This is not the creator of the game, but rather the person who played it a couple years ago, around 2006, which makes it 13 or 12 years ago. God damn, this game is old, or it's getting old anyway. So yeah, this was a RPG Maker game, 2003 engine. I don't remember any of the previous builds except the last one, I think. And I really didn't know that it had a story or not. I just remember basically a BattleTech demo, but apparently there is. And this is the first incarnation of Finding Forever Eden. And I was thinking about how like ideas always tend to change throughout the development process, you know, how games are essentially made. But it's very obvious with games made by one person, because you have so much control over what you're doing as an artist and a creative person that you kind of can pivot from any idea that you want to have. I feel like in collaborative processes you kind of have to go with what's been decided, because if you have too many contradictory ideas among your peers, and you know, nothing will get done. And that can also happen with a solo project, but it's interesting to me sort of going through these multiple demos. So I mean, the thing about RPG Maker games is like when you're documenting like all these like different demos and full games, there's really never really a set release date for any of these games, assuming they even get completed, because you're kind of left with all these sort of demos that are showing off the game, I suppose, but we're really just a work in progress, basically what the creator has already done, basically. And right now there's not really much to show of where this game project is going. It's just like a simple BattleTech demo. I ran out of MP during this fight. I don't know how, but I was just like, oh, okay. But most of the fight is handled by the AI character, who seems to be popping in and out invisibly. It's kind of weird. I don't know why. It might not be intentional. But yeah, there's like an AoE attack that you can do typically when you're not out of MP. And it does a lot of damage to all the enemies. But there's not really a strategy here. There's just kind of showing off the animations and sort of what the game world feels like, I guess. This background, the scrolling grid background, tends to be a motif throughout all of the other demos, for a menu or just sort of like this abyss kind of area kind of thing. It's really interesting how that sort of keeps being around throughout all the demos. And I guess my point about people always sort of shifting ideas and kind of reiterating on the same game idea, but then like never really getting anywhere with it. It's interesting to see like what things just stay the same. Like for the creator, like this has to be the same thing every time. Like it must be, you know. It's interesting to kind of see that reflected through these demos. And you know, like I always thought like there's not really much for me to talk about these like little RPG Maker games, but the more introspective I get about the creative process, what the creative process must have been like making this game, it actually kind of reveals a lot through these sort of little tech demo showpieces, I guess. So this guy won't fucking die. I'm pretty sure I just give up eventually. If you escape from the battle, it'll give you like it'll basically replay the battle for you again. If you win the battle, it'll just do the same thing. So there's not really much else to show off at this point. So this came out in an interesting era where people were really experimenting with the default battle system of RPG Maker 2003. With RPG Maker 2000, a lot of people had to use a custom battle system to get their side view fixed to change the way the battles looked. There was some weird ways. People would like have battle animations that would have the character come in from the side, and then you see your character like actually attacking the enemy as opposed to like a first-person view, sword slash. I guess it was kind of interesting because it took a while for people to really start pushing the boundaries of what the default battle system of 2003 could do. Because I think there was like this kind of grace period where people were just excited to have side view at all. They were just like, oh, we got this now. But then you start gradually seeing more and more people kind of going, okay, we have this sort of custom default battle system almost, where they're inserting like status ailments, not even for the status ailment itself, but rather just to trigger certain animations or certain things to happen. There'd also be like spells with unique MP costs, so that you could easily compare the MP cost of your current turn to the last turn to see which spell that you've used, so you can properly check, like, oh, you use this spell, then this will happen, basically. Spells couldn't really do things on their own. They could do damage, they could inflict status ailments and stuff like that, but they couldn't do complex things that you could do in the battle event. And there was quite annoying ways to get battle events to respond to certain things like skills. This is taking a little while here. I guess I could say about this battle system so far is that the creator of this game tends to actually rename a lot of the commands to something that are pretty much like the same as any other RPG, but they're named differently for the sake of it for some reason. Like induce actually just means the inventory, but I guess in this game's context, you're not using items, you're using some sort of like abstract thing that does not take up your inventory space or something like that. But anyway, I'm not really sure what impurity means. I think it's supposed to be like you can't use magic. That might be why the MP was gone, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's different. I know there's like some stuff later on that tells me what impurity does, but so basically by 2011, this game actually resurfaced on RMN. It got posted on RMN for the first time since Gaming World, like probably the 2006 topic, I guess. And people were really confused. People thought this was like a different guy because the screenshots didn't look exactly like the old demos, but they still used the Suikoden 2 tile rips and the same sort of aesthetic, and people thought this guy was like, this guy ripping off Forever Finding Eden or something, and people were very confused. But it's kind of funny how it basically turned out to be the same guy. Although people didn't really like confirm it, although maybe with the blog posts do. But if you read the blog post of Ghosts of the Arcanum, it's a pretty like documentative, like it's definitely the guy. It's definitely the dude who made Finding Forever Eden, like the way he describes his own history and stuff like that. So it isn't really a huge concern. It was just like, like the game changed so much since 2006 to 2011 that of course it's going to look different and seems a little suspicious, but yeah, it was kind of funny. So yeah, I gave up on the battle and I loaded up a save file that actually leads to another area in the game, and this NPC basically gives a reference to Eldritch, another word that I'm probably mispronouncing, like Suikoden or Suikoden. I always say Suikoden, but whatever. Anyway, so Eldritch was a game made by Legion, or Max McGee, as he was kind of changed his identity between the communities. But yeah, that game was kind of an influence in the community in a way. The thing is, I actually don't know much about Eldritch, but I keep seeing it pop up everywhere, like as like another game that Legion did. But I only really know the history of the Iron Gaia controversy. I wouldn't call it a controversy, but it was just kind of like this thing that was annoying to certain parties involved and funny to other parties involved, basically. But yeah, just kind of interesting how you see the gaming world forum lore embedded into these games, even when you're not looking for it. You know, it just keeps popping up once in a while, and I'm like, I should probably look into Eldritch. I should probably, you know, look into that game because it's weird. I know there's an archive of it somewhere. It seemed like a very big, made a splash in the community for better or worse, and I don't remember anything of it. I saw it posted in a screenshot topic way back in Game World. I remember like the screenshot, but I didn't remember that there was a demo, and apparently there is actually. I think it might have been like a release something event or something like that, but yeah. So there's really nothing much else. You just do this really slow walk speed throughout this entire area, and it's so bad. Like, everyone complains about walk speeds, but this has to be unintentional. Like, this is slower than this walk speed that people don't like, basically. Like, typically you want, I think faster than normal walk speed. Or no, I think the default walk speed is actually the one that you want. But everyone would sometimes make it slower than that just because they were afraid that you wouldn't take in the scenery or something like that, even though you could just, you know, stop your character. Here you can see I am doing the speedrun strat known as walking through the grass instead of the path. Yeah, there's really nothing else in this map. I'm pretty sure I give up at some point, even though there might be some sort of cutscene. You know, at this point I'm pretty sure this wasn't, you know, intended for the player to experience or anything. But I mean, if you want to take in the scenery of this Suikoden chipset, I wouldn't blame you. But yeah, sometimes I just get really, really desperate with these things where, like, you know, there's like a demo that's like really short, and then you find out the author had like a load file somewhere, and then you're just kind of desperate to finding any extra content whatsoever that you could find of this game, because I'm really trying to just, you know, cover every possible avenue. Most of the games that I cover, especially if they're really small demos, I'm like, okay, you know what? Here, try to see everything possible that this game can throw at you. And I did check all the maps of this particular project, and I don't think I found anything extra than this. It's just a giant, you know, national park kind of map with a battle that doesn't really happen. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You can watch my speedrun strat some more, I guess. Yeah, and that absolutely says nothing. I went there for nothing. How disappointing. All right. Let's check the other demo build. And basically, I think this is the next one is the intro. So it's just story. There's no actual gameplay.
Where am I? Is this a dream? Well, I'm tired of dreaming. I want to wake up.
So yeah, that was the voiceover from what I assume is the author of the game. I actually think it's kind of a cool voiceover thing. It's kind of makes it more personal, right? I have no idea what that's for, I guess. It's just, you know, there's very ominous kind of out of context dialogue and then into the main story of this game's lore. So this is one of these sort of slow crawl introductory sequences that are in a lot of RPG Maker games, but at least compared to others, this has a lot more visual overlays going on, just going all out on the swirly stuff and scaling things into the foreground. And there's a lot of religious thematic stuff going on, which is little more heavier than most RPGs would go for. I could name some other RPG Maker games that kind of went for that kind of stuff, but ultimately, like, the world building is a little excessive here, though. I think you can make good, compelling world building, but it has to be a little coherent sometimes. But it is interesting. I do think, like, you can kind of see what you're in for kind of introductory sequence going on, where there's all these like biblical references and mythology kind of going on. But there is something to this game's aesthetic that I really like, where it kind of almost like making religion into a digital aesthetic. Because there's that white grid thing that you see going on there, and I think that's like a Jewish mythology thing or religious thing, which is interesting. And god damn it, that background you see is in like every title screen of an RPG Maker game ever. I don't know what it's from though. I think it's just like, might be from Final Fantasy IX. I'm not sure, but or it could just be Valkyrie Profile. I have no idea. Yeah, that background too is also, I've seen that in Beloved Rapture, I think, as well. A lot of RPG Maker games use these sort of graphics. But yeah, I just like this sort of, I think the aesthetic is kind of cool with this game, and you kind of see that in full force, but it's also like a really short intro demo that doesn't get seen in the later demos. Like, I'm pretty sure it's pretty much like scrapped. Like, the author doesn't use it anymore. But it's like, it looks like a lot of effort was put into this, right? Like, you'd have to replay the cutscene over and over and over, and just, you know, like making sure everything lines up and is timed correctly. And I don't think there's only like 2 maps in this demo, so all these pictures that you're seeing, there's no teleport to another map or anything. Like, it's just one long audio event, and it's crazy. Yeah, there we go. Finding Forever Eden. And yeah, that's kind of it. We'll get to a much longer demo next, though. And I think that's kind of the highlight. That's kind of more or less the next demo actually has story and gameplay this time around. Yo, dude, what if you, like, take the gameplay of the last demo and take the story from the next demo and put them together? Genius, man! Genius, why didn't I think of that before, man? Anyway, so this particular demo has like a menu within a menu, and I guess it's kind of interesting how some people got really obsessed with the presentation of how to present your game. You know, it just, all you need to do is like start the game, but there's got to be all these like little option menus and widgets and little things all together. But I guess it's also interesting to think about the psychology of not really thinking about the logistics or the specific purpose of everything, but just more or less like, oh, my RPG has to have these things because that's what RPGs have. And that's kind of like a general theme with a lot of RPG Maker games, is that a lot of stuff that's implemented in them is because RPGs have them, my game must have them kind of logic. But I don't think that's like inherently like wrong. I think that's just like, there's a sense of that in every like media or medium that we do, where it's like, well, I just have it here because that's what other things do. And if I don't have it, then it might be weird or it might be unexpected, because I guess you need some things to be expected for the unexpected to hit really well at times. So we actually have some dialogue in this game now that isn't like, welcome to the tutorial area. And the dialogue is very emotional, not in a way that's like the characters are expressing themselves emotionally, but I mean that isn't driven by a literal like plot. It's driven by like what the author is trying to express, I guess. But it mostly feels like conversations from Kingdom Hearts, not just because of the music in the background, but like just that influence, right? That PS2 era influence, because I think Kingdom Hearts 2 came out a little before this. Or I think that's 2005, and this game's 2006, so it kind of lines up with that kind of PS2 era influence, kind of anime melodrama kind of craziness going on. It was kind of an interesting time because I don't know, like why was the 2000s so emo driven and angst driven more so than other generations, you know? Like all teenagers are melodramatic, right? To some degree, but for some reason the early 2000s just had that energy. So the story flow so far is very kind of dreamlike, you know? You're kind of going from place to place, and I guess it's like when Kingdom Hearts, when Sora is kind of taken off the island and everything just goes crazy. This is kind of like this general sequence, but it is interesting because there's that sequence that just happened earlier reminds me of Silent Hill, actually, with the screen going red and like the sirens going off in the distance. It kind of blends a lot of elements together of like what people had on the mind at the time when writing these sort of psychological driven stories, you know? Though I guess it's like when the author doesn't know how to end the scene, you just have the sirens go off in the character's head, and you'll explain everything later, and everything will make sense in the end. I guess that's why I really like The Way, because it does all that shit. It does all that weird, confusing, like, oh, you know, like, you'll understand later kind of stuff, and you do actually understand later if you do put the puzzle pieces together. A lot of people don't like The Way because they felt like it was disappointing, but not really. It actually does a lot with accomplishing what a lot of other RPGs tried to do, with sort of the melodramatic kind of tragedy kind of thing where nothing makes sense anymore, and oh no, like I need to struggle with myself. It's very, very introspective kind of style of storytelling. What I'm basically saying is that if you don't like The Way, then you're just not smart. You have low IQ. I have big galaxy brain. Anyway, so the most notable thing about the combat this time around is the leap attack, or rather there's like a context command. Depending on which battle it is, you can do this like attack that's it's almost like a set piece attack that the author has kind of configured, but there's not really much playing around this kind of thing. Like, you don't have to do much as a player, you just sort of select it because it does a shit ton of damage. But there's some like cool stuff you could do with this, I think, as a creator. There's like here's the problem. In this playthrough of the demo, I keep trying to like pull it off so that basically it looks like, you'll see later on, but basically there's like two enemies that surround you and they both do this burst attack thing, and the context command makes you dodge the burst attack and makes it look like the burst attack goes to the other enemy since you're surrounded. Like, basically you make them attack each other. But I didn't manage to do that once. I did that a lot in the playthrough I wasn't recording, but like I just can't seem to get it right. But it's I'm kind of doing the game a disservice, really. But yeah, right now I'm just fighting single enemies, so there's not really much to demonstrate. But yeah, like the combat has like had some changes. It's actually kind of seems more simplified now. But it's really hard with BattleTech demos, because I feel like this demo in particular is definitely trying to start from a blank slate rather than demonstrate what a fully leveled character would look like, you know? Because that's another thing, is like it's hard to tell if the progression is any good versus just a combat system on its own. Yeah, right now it's just kind of, you're just killing bad guys. If you do this under the time limit, you get an extra item. If you mess up, then you don't really get a game over. You just sort of don't get the cool item, I guess. So this game has a dash feature. It's toggle to dash instead of hold down to dash, which is good. Problem is though, it seems to reset after each battle, which is really annoying, and it's like this isn't really hard. Just don't bother with the dash feature. Don't put in the work. Like, the game is fine with just normal walk speed. That's just, I hate to be the guy who dictates everything, but you just let people run at their own pace by default, and you're good. Just some people just never really got it through their heads, I guess, which is fine. I mean, again, it's like what I talked about a while back, was like my RPG needs all these RPG things. Like, there might be an actual, like, Wild Arms, for instance, has like initial D drift movement in that game. But at least it's programmed and designed for that kind of thing, like dodging stuff and whatnot, even though it is an RPG. But I'm just saying the engine constraints of RPG Maker does not allow you to really do that. But then you have RPGs that are not made in RPG Maker that have very flexible movement systems that people want to adhere to for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't know. A lot of people just don't ever get it right. So we have the return of the grid that we keep seeing in all the other demos. But then it kind of has like almost like a plot relevance kind of thing, kind of letting the character know that, you know, something's bad happening, or that maybe the world isn't like real, essentially. I really like the motif though, just as a, you know, Silent Hill has the fog, right? And this game kind of has its own little like abstract grid thing. It kind of reminds me of Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask, either one, where you're time traveling and there's just like a clock. You're like in a white space and there's just like a black clock thing, and it's very, yeah, it's like black and white kind of aesthetic, and it just has this sort of otherworldly void. And that's what kind of makes this game so memorable to me, really. Just that choice of aesthetic. And it's funny because I talk about like, oh, you know, the dash feature, you know, it'd be less work for you to just not have the dash feature in the game. And the most important aesthetic to me is just him. It's the same grid that he's used since the first demo, and it takes him no work at all to reuse that grid over and over and over. Like, it's efficient, right? That it's such a good. He's so attached to this like aesthetic and style that he keeps reusing it, and it's less work for him in the future that way, at least. Hopefully you're not remaking the demo over and over, but if you're going to do it, at least reuse assets over and over. So I guess we go into more story. Yeah, I guess like the character we haven't really progressed too much. The character's just kind of confused of what's going on, and he basically has amnesia, but my understanding is basically he's like a memory fragment of like an existing character. So that save menu we were at just now, when you load the game, it's actually the option is called like create cross memory, meaning that you're probably creating a brand new memory that assumes that you didn't die or something like that. So there's a lot of like the story and the menu like naming kind of melds together a little bit. Like, the context is that you're a memory fragment thing, and whenever you start a new game, you're creating like a new memory, I guess. I don't know. I guess what I find interesting is that like this whole game has like a mission structure, so that like there's like submissions and stuff like that where you can replay the mission but with like a higher challenge. I do think I play that part a little bit later on, but yeah. Now we can watch me fail this freaking context attack. I don't really fail, but I fail to show off the intended look to this. But you can imagine like how much work this stuff takes to make it look good, with all these like, you know, the default battle system stuff I was talking about earlier. where it's almost as much work as making a custom battle system at this point. Or, you know, like it defeats the purpose of having this battle system, this default, quote unquote, default battle system do the work for you, right? When you're spending all this time just to get the animations to work for your special, like, game feature. But yeah, the problem with the context command is, well, first of all, it gives you like almost like a tutorial on the what the context command does. But since the context command is different depending on the area, you kind of need it, but you only really need it for the first time. But I think it also kind of shows the development problems of what this sort of does, because now you need to make a unique animation for each and every single like battle scenario, where like, okay, like maybe you could use the leap attack in like other situations, but there's just something about the potential workload that you're giving yourself, basically. Because I remember like in Legion Saga 3, there's a demo where they're going to have dual attacks, basically like in Chrono Trigger, where two characters can like combine their skills together and do a double attack or whatever, and it looks really cool. But I think it was axed in the final game. There's none of that in the final Legion Saga 3 game, so probably because it just took too much work. And I do recall, like, you know, the character that has a double tech thing with the main character obviously doesn't. He was sort of the Kain, the Final Fantasy IV Kain of the story, so obviously wouldn't be seeing him anymore. But yeah, I think this is like another indication of, you know, the author coming up with a really cool idea, and the result isn't too crazy, but it is kind of fun in its own little, like, you want to find out what the animation looks like every time you come to a new context situation. And even if it's like the most optimal option to use in every scenario, like, it feels good to use it. It feels like you're taking advantage of something. But ultimately, think about how much work this takes to get it to look right. If you couldn't tell already, basically what the game wants me to do, or what the game wants it to look like, is that the enemy shoots a burst attack and you hopefully are reacting to a burst attack and not a melee attack. Because what happens is basically you jump up and the animation plays of the burst attack coming out of nowhere when it's supposed to synchronize with the burst attack coming from the enemy, I suppose, or maybe onto you. I'm not really sure. Anyway, we got this confrontation with this enemy that we're about to go up against, and you know, the boss fight here actually switches gears completely. Like, it's a completely different fight. I think I kind of messed things up a little bit, but for the most part, it's pretty standard boss fight, actually. But we'll see how it goes. So yeah, we got the sirens from Silent Hill, kind of enforcing this sort of, I guess it's just sort of dark past that your character is a memory of, or something. I don't know. There's some stuff about dark and lightness, and how, you know, there's a contradiction in how that relationship works out, or whatever. To be honest, I'm too tired to even look into this. I'm sure it makes sense. So the creator last made a post in around 2012, I believe. And the game page was like reposted around 2011. But the author had like posted a lot of like interesting tidbits about the game's development. So it actually didn't really start with 2006, arguably. It was actually another game under another name, but it was essentially the same like like story concept and whatnot under an RPG Maker 95 game. But what's interesting to me was I was doing a lot of research in RPG Maker 95's translation and this whole saga behind T Nomad and Don Miguel. And he mentioned T Nomad a lot, and he, you know, it was like interesting that, so there's actually two versions of RPG Maker 95 that were translated. The one made by T Nomad, the partial one, that wasn't finished, and the one that Don Miguel finished. And I think it used some of T Nomad's work, but I'm not 100% sure. But there's kind of this mystery I was kind of solving, which is like, did anyone make games during the T Nomad era of RPG Maker 95? It's a very short-lived era where the program barely worked because of the amount of errors with the translation and whatnot. But at least this guy's blog posts kind of confirmed that, yeah, he was working on a game during that time. Maybe he didn't finish the game, obviously. But he also mentions that he had an RPG Maker 95 game that was 25 hours long and was actually like substantially complete, I guess. I would like to play it if it's still around somewhere. And I assume it's not the same name as Finding Forever Eden or The Ghosts of Arcanum, but I'm not sure. So in this boss fight, you're supposed to kill the core, and then you just attack the other main body, which I've done already. So yeah, this character's pose actually changes in this fight from the others. I assume you changed the battle character set animation through the class change or something. Or, you know, maybe it's a separate character, but I don't think you can change this in the middle of battle. So it's really interesting that the fight is like so much different, because I guess it's like a tutorial on how to do magic and stuff like that, but he has a completely different battle stance actually. And I don't know, it's kind of weird. It's kind of one of those things where, yeah, you did this all this work into this one little fight, I guess. This one boss fight where it's like, all right, I'm gonna have you change a battle stance. I'm gonna introduce a brand new game mechanic. I'm not sure if I understand the Arcana game mechanic, but I think I mess around with it and lose the charge, but then I still get the EP back, I guess, the MP, I guess, in this case. But yeah, the 10 EP that you see coming back to your character with the yellow text is actually just an animation. Like if you want it, you can't change the number unless you redo and make a brand new animation for it. So it's these kind of workarounds that were very hard to work with, and really it was really interesting what you had to do in order to display numbers and information that way. But yeah, we're almost to the end of the demo, but not quite. There's some other extra stuff that we could check out, but there's really not much else. There's a funny like little sub scene, I guess, but yeah, that's pretty much like the 4.0 demo that really kind of demonstrates the most that this game was trying to do, I guess. But thinking back on the whole, like how ideas change throughout the game development, you know, the author's blog posts tend to talk at length about how he's, you know, kind of a perfectionist and he's never really happy with what he's made. You know, very, very common motivational aspects of game development where you're just not happy with what you have, even though it's probably good to someone who's never seen your game before, right? Like, it's easy to get bored of the intro over and over and be like, oh, this isn't good. Or you listen to the feedback of the people that played your demo and it's like, oh, well, I gotta redo what I have so far instead of actually just making more content for your game. A huge problem with the community. Even back then, people kind of knew that was an issue. And it probably is still an issue for a lot of people. A lot of people like just reiterating on the same ideas over and over and over. And I'm not trying to like be mean or dump on this guy like, huh, this is what you get for being a perfectionist. But I think there's still something you can get out of this kind of game. Just seeing like what was being attempted and the style, the desaturated black and white kind of mood. Another experimental aspect of this game was the mission structure. It's hard to see this in action because there's only one mission, I'm assuming. So it's hard to see like how this plays out or whatnot, but it's weird because most RPGs have like a very open-ended kind of, you can go wherever you want, or you can at least revisit places you've been to before. Like it's kind of just this big world, I guess. But this game has like a kind of like a mission select kind of aspect to it, where you can like replay missions and like probably get grade ratings. It reminds me of like Devil May Cry or something. But it's kind of this thing where it makes the game different, I guess. Like it's a very different kind of thing that most people would do with their RPGs. And I kind of like that. I don't know what it contributes, because when you think about RPGs, they're kind of designed for you to progress through a story, and having all these like having it broken up into missions is kind of weird. But maybe there's something I'm not seeing. You know, maybe there's something that would have been cool, really. And yeah, you can like replay sections of the game, but like with a harder. You'll see in a moment. There's like a part where like you have to fight this much harder enemy that I died to, and I give up pretty easily. But you get the idea of what it's trying to do with that whole difficulty thing. I guess extra content. But yeah, there's all these like different ideas being explored around here, where you can like revisit like story sections and whatnot. There's actually like a commentary thing that I'm interested to see that isn't available, but apparently there's going to be like a director's commentary, which is different from what I'm doing. I'm just someone commentary. But I guess there's enough like background info about this game so far in the blog posts, and actually the screenshot section on the game page of this game has some like really old shots detailing like, oh, here's what the RM95 game looked like and whatnot. So I'm kind of glad that there's some sort of preservation in that aspect. Well, yeah, there are definitely a lot of ideas going on here. Oh yeah, there's the passcode that I failed to input leads you to like a forest area. Haven't really checked it out, but I'm pretty sure it's like an empty forest map for some reason. Maybe the author didn't assume that you'll go into the game's files and figure out what that leads to. But yeah, it's kind of weird. Just what is a cubed? Like it's so abstract on like what all this is for, and it's like a weird amalgamation of what we think games ought to have in terms of extra content, and yet also be mysterious. Because it's kind of cool that you can kind of walk around in this like level set area, or like revisit like parts in time in that way, and it makes the game feel like content filled, or like memorable, or just like replayable, I guess. There's kind of like the intention behind it. But you know, like the PS1 and PS2 era, we kind of got really into making like interesting replayable sections, I guess, or like time limits and whatnot. Okay, so this is the actual demo that I remember playing way back in 2006 or 2007. Might have been posted on RMN or something like that. When it was, no, because it came on RMN in 2011, like rather late, so it couldn't have been that. But yeah, it was just a weird transition phase between Gaming World and RMN, where RPG Maker games were kind of getting really advanced with their battle systems, even with the default battle systems. And you can actually see the evolution here. There's like symbols being used. The thing that there's like a symbol command that you can type in the message boxes and whatnot, or pretty much anywhere with text. And this demo has that. Because a lot of games would have like little unique little ways of displaying like HP. Instead of HP, you have a heart or something like that. Just like little polished touches to the game that makes it more unique to your own ideas, I guess. But yeah, this demo is what I played and what I remember and what I kind of imagined. And it just stuck with me for some reason. That's kind of why I did this like a video, was I wanted to give out like what I thought of it and what was interesting to me when playing the demos that I did not remember. Maybe I did play these demos I just don't know. This is like the only one I remember. It was like this cabin area, and it has this very, you know, bleak Suikoden look to everything, and guys in black trench coats and all this stuff. But the funny thing is, like, this demo, it goes back to just being a single battle demonstration, and we're back to square one, which is just, hey, here's a battle that I'm testing out. I'm redoing the battle system. Or in the blog post, he says he's rebuilding the battle system. So yeah, you know, this project has a lot of problems with you know, just being happy with what you got and making more content past that. And you know, the issue is, like, maybe you become more skilled as development progresses, but I think you have to just put up with that, really. Like, you have to accept that, yeah, my game would have been better if I started over, but you know what, it's better to have that for the next game, or better to have the inconsistency than to not have a game at all, really. And maybe that's not the cost, the trade-off, perhaps, but you know, when at the extreme, that's what it should be. Alright, so my big brain galaxy theory is that all these demos actually represent the amnesia, schizophrenic nature of the game's story. You see, the reason why Rowan, the main character of the demo before this one, doesn't know who he is because the game author keeps remaking the damn demo. So he's like, where am I? What am I doing here? You keep changing the story all the time. Maybe that was the intention all along, you know? But yeah, this is, I mean, this demo is kind of short, so there's not much else to talk about or explore, but I think at the end of the day, I just want to say, you know, I'm glad this game exists, rather than not at all. You know, might never ever be completed, but who knows? The author did mention that in a 2016 post, because I'm such a good stalker, that he was like asking for, like, hey, what should I get? RPG Maker MV or VX Ace or whatever. I hope he got VX Ace, in my personal opinion, but yeah, I mean, you never know. This game might turn up one day again, but you know, the author has responsibilities now. He's an adult like everyone else, and there's just a lot of things going on in his life that distract from a small hobbyist RPG project. So, but he has made a ton of progress on an unreleased version of the game. I kind of wish he would just release that, because it seems to have a lot more content than any of the demos I've played. You can see in this battle screenshot I have up here that it looks pretty different. And the character's name's changed. It's no longer Rowan, apparently. But it's kind of cool that just to see the game kind of progress throughout the years. But anyway, that's enough talking. I'm done. Hope you enjoyed this commentary. And I'll probably do stuff like this some more. And if I have a lot to talk about that I couldn't fit into an article, then I'll probably do stuff like this. Or if people like this kind of content, I don't know, let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, I guess, if you want to. I don't really know.